Let's speak to Dr. Duncan Robertson. He's in Oxford. Duncan, how bad are the numbers that we're seeing?
Well, I think, we're looking in the rearview mirror. These 78,000 cases aren't the number of people who are infected. And of course, those Wednesday figures, most of those were swabbed on Monday, had PCR tests on Monday. So they're likely to be infected last week. And what we're seeing with Omicron is it's doubling roughly every 2 days. So this is really, huge growth, particularly in London. And I think, we have to realise it was only 3 weeks ago that the world actually started to know about Omicron, and now, it's dominant in London. So it's a huge problem.
You said, as have many others in your field, that the numbers are sort of doubling every 2, perhaps to 3 days. Does that mean we might see and might reach the peak quite quickly?
Well, certainly it depends what you mean by reaching the peak, because one of the issues we're going to find is that actually we run out of capacity for PCR tests. So if we just look at cases, then perhaps that's going to flatten off, whereas actually the number of infections still starts to rise. The other thing is we, of course, have two things going on. We have a Delta epidemic, which is roughly constant, probably falling a bit now. And we have this kind of exponential explosion of Omicron. So it's taken some time to get these real signals. Yes, we are probably going to get a very focused number of cases, but I think the thing to say about that is it won't just all be over in a week. It will still take weeks and months of large case numbers, so it'll come down relatively slowly.
Right. I mean, we're still waiting for that all-important data about the severity of the Omicron variant, because we've talked about how transmissible it is. But even if it is milder, because of the sheer numbers, could it still put pressure on the NHS in a way that might overwhelm it?
Absolutely. I think that's becoming more and more likely as we go on. So you can sort of wait for all the data to come in, but we do know 3 out of the 3 things. We know that it's extremely transmissible. We know that you can get reinfected. And the other thing to say about cases is currently it excludes people who are reinfected, who've had it before. That may change soon. We know that also people who've had vaccines have a limited protection. So boosters are very important, but the rate of booster rollout isn't going to control the peak. And in terms of whether it'll overwhelm the NHS, that really defines how you define it overwhelming the NHS. So if you kind of say the NHS can never be overwhelmed, then it won't be overwhelmed.
And what's your response then to the Prime Minister saying yesterday Plan B and the vaccine programme is what we're going to work with at the moment in terms of restrictions?
Well, with all these things, I think we've seen it with Alpha, we've seen it with Delta. You can either be proactive and do things and hopefully reduce things so that increases the likelihood, for example, of schools opening normally in January, or having NHS and critical staff being able to come in, because of course if they all get infected at once, that's going to cause huge problems. So really, it depends what you think, but there's a real risk coming in the next few months.